everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be diving into something that I think pretty much all of us struggle with sometimes, and that's that hesitation that holds us back from actually going after those big goals that we have. So to help us really explore this topic, we're going to be taking a deep dive into this article called Why Hesitation Costs More Than Failure and How to Break Free.
Yeah.
And what I really like about this article is that it doesn't just point out the problem, which a lot of articles like this do.
Right.
It actually gives us some really solid strategies for how to, break free.
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of times we can get stuck in that knowing but not doing.
Right.
And this article really tries to bridge that gap.
Yeah, totally. And, it starts off strong with this idea of inaction being like a quiet saboteur of dreams.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but for me, that really hit home.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's just so easy to let those dreams kind of get muffled by, the just everyday hustle and bustle of life.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think what's interesting about the way this article frames inaction is it's not just like a standstill. It's like an active force working against us.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point.
It's not that we're just passively letting things slip by. It's almost like we're actively moving further away from what we want.
So it's like we're on a treadmill to nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, if we're actively, I guess, sabotaging ourselves in a way.
Yeah.
Why do we do it? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Well, the article breaks it down and says there's like 4 main culprits. Fear of failure, fear of success, perfectionism, and analysis paralysis.
And, rather than even thinking about these as like separate fears, I think it's helpful to almost see them as points along a spectrum. Because I think we all know that feeling of just like being so afraid to mess up that we just don't even try, right?
Yeah.
It's a classic fear of failure. But then there's this other end of the spectrum where, strangely enough, we're afraid of actually succeeding.
Wait, okay, hold on. Fear of success. That sounds a little counterintuitive to me. Can you explain that one a little bit?
Yeah, I know it's strange, right? But think about it. Sometimes we can be on the verge of like achieving a big goal, but then we start to like self-sabotage. It's almost like we're scared of what that success might bring, like more responsibility, higher expectations, maybe even like losing friends who aren't on the same path.
Oh, yeah, I get what you mean. Like it's safer to stay stuck even if we're unhappy because at least it's familiar.
Exactly. And, somewhere in between those two extremes are perfectionism and analysis paralysis.
Oh, my gosh. Perfectionism is totally me.
Yeah.
Like I can just spend hours tweaking something that's probably already good enough.
Right.
And don't even get me started on analysis paralysis. I think I spent a whole afternoon one time comparing different reusable water bottles.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there.
I mean, come on.
But, the point is whether we're, terrified of failing, secretly dreading success, or just totally getting lost in overthinking everything.
Yeah.
All these anxieties are really designed to do one thing, to keep us in our comfort zones.
Okay, so comfort zones, they're cozy. I get it. But they don't exactly lead to, actually achieving our dreams, right?
Right.
So what's the price that we pay for getting too comfortable?
Yeah.
Because the article uses pretty strong language here. It says that basically inaction actively works against you.
Right. And those consequences of staying stuck?
Yeah.
They can often be way more significant than we realize. Because it's not just about what we don't achieve. It's about the opportunities we miss.
Yeah.
The experiences we never have, and even the person we don't become.
It's like we're trading in our dreams for regrets.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of regrets, the article shares this story about a woman named Sarah. And she had this really brilliant app idea, but she just got totally bogged down in like perfecting every single detail of her business plan. And by the time she finally launched, the market was already flooded with similar apps.
Ouch.
Ouch is right.
Yeah.
And her story is like a perfect example of how perfectionism and delay, they can actually have real tangible costs.
Right. It's a good reminder that sometimes good enough is better than waiting for perfect. Especially when it comes to like seizing those opportunities.
That's so true. So I guess the takeaway here is that the article is really urging us to kind of embrace the messiness of action, even if it means making mistakes along the way.
Yeah, precisely. The core message is this. Action, even if it's imperfect, is always going to be better than inaction.
Okay, I love it. So we've talked about why we hesitate and the price we pay for it, but the real question is, how do we break free? How do we actually move from knowing to doing? That's what we're going to be diving into in the rest of our deep dive, so stick around.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Okay, so we spent some time unpacking, why we get stuck.
Right.
But the million-dollar question is, how do we actually break free?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to, acknowledge these fears, but it's a whole other thing to actually overcome them.
Absolutely. And that's where this article really shines, I think, because it moves beyond just like diagnosing the problem. And it actually gives us some practical strategies for how to get unstuck.
Okay, perfect, because I am all about that actionable advice.
Yeah.
So what's the first step? Like, how do we start to break free from this hesitation?
Well, the article really emphasizes this idea of reframing failure. So it's not about looking at failure as like the opposite of success.
Okay.
It's actually a really important part of the process.
I love that.
Right.
It kind of takes the pressure off, to have to get everything perfect right away.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even like the most successful people you can think of,
Right.
they've encountered probably countless setbacks
along
the way.
For sure.
And the key is to view those setbacks as learning opportunities and not reasons to quit.
The article actually quotes Thomas Edison. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work."
Oh, it's so good.
What a mindset.
Isn't it? It's brilliant. He's basically saying that he turned failure into data. Like each setback was just information that brought him closer to his goal.
Yeah, that is such a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
The article also highlights how taking action, even if it's imperfect, can actually bring clarity. It's like you can plan and strategize all day long, but it's only when we start doing that we really learn what works and what doesn't.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain type of knowledge you can only gain through experience.
Right.
Through actually getting your hands dirty, testing your ideas out in the real world.
And here's something that I thought was really interesting. The article talks about how momentum actually builds motivation.
That's so true.
Like we kind of have it backwards, right?
Yeah.
We often wait to feel motivated before we take action.
Yeah, like, oh, I'll start when I feel inspired.
Right.
But often that inspiration actually comes from the doing itself.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, a body in motion stays in motion.
Yeah.
Once we start taking action, even if it's small steps, it creates this like positive feedback loop.
Absolutely.
That just keeps us moving forward.
And that leads us to another key point the article makes.
Okay.
It's not about achieving perfection, it's about making progress.
Yes.
We can get so caught up in wanting everything to be flawless, which just leads to procrastination and ultimately inaction.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
But how do we break free from that perfectionism trap?
Well, luckily, the article provides 5 really actionable strategies that we can start implementing right away.
Okay, yes, let's hear them. I'm ready.
All right, so strategy number 1 is to start small.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we get overwhelmed by like the enormity of our goals. So the key is to just break them down into those tiny, manageable steps.
Yeah, sometimes I get so caught up in like the big picture that I just freeze.
Right.
But if I can just like focus on that next tiny step, it feels way less daunting.
Exactly. And the article even says like if you're feeling overwhelmed by a task, like let's say writing a book.
Yeah.
Try just starting with 1 sentence.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's about shifting your focus from like the overwhelming whole to the manageable part.
I love that. It's like tricking your brain into taking action.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next?
All right, number 2 is to set a timer.
Okay.
And the article specifically recommends the Pomodoro technique, which I think you might have heard of.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've even tried it a few times.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much you can get done when you just have that like focused block of time.
It's true. It really is a great way to overcome procrastination and improve your focus.
Right.
And it also just helps to break down larger tasks into those more manageable chunks.
Love it. All right. What's strategy number 3?
This one is all about progress, not perfection. Remember, done is better than perfect.
Okay.
Perfectionism is often the enemy of action. It's so true. It's like we use perfectionism as an excuse to like not put ourselves out there.
Yeah.
Because we're so afraid of messing up that we end up doing nothing at all.
And that's a great point. And that actually leads us perfectly into strategy number 4, which is reframing failure.
Okay.
So instead of seeing our mistakes as setbacks, we need to view them as stepping stones.
Right.
Like each mistake is actually bringing us closer to our goal.
Yeah, it's like that quote, we learn more from our failures than from our successes.
Exactly.
But it's so hard to like really internalize that message, you know?
It is, and that's why this shift in perspective is so important.
Right.
It's about embracing that learning process, even when it's messy and uncomfortable.
Okay, I'm ready for the final strategy. Lay it on me.
All right, so the 5th and final strategy is to visualize your future self.
Ooh, okay.
So imagine how you'll feel like a year from now,
Mm-hmm.
having taken consistent action towards your goals.
Okay.
Compare that to the feeling of regret that comes from staying stuck. Ooh, visualization is powerful. I've used that before. Just
Yeah.
to kind of help me stay motivated,
Yeah.
especially when I'm feeling discouraged.
It can be so powerful because it allows you to, like, tap into the positive emotions that are associated with achieving your goals.
Yeah.
And it helps you to reconnect with your why
Uh-huh.
and stay focused on the bigger picture.
Okay, so let me see if I got all 5.
Yeah.
Start small,
Mm-hmm.
set a timer, progress, not perfection, reframe failure, and visualize your future self. Did I get them all?
You got them all.
Awesome. And, the thing I love about these strategies
Mm-hmm.
is that they're all about shifting our mindset from
Yeah.
fear to action.
Exactly.
But let's be honest,
Uh-huh.
sometimes, even with all the best strategies in the world, it can still be really tough to just get over that initial hurdle,
Right.
like that hesitation, to actually take that first step.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you say to people who are struggling with that, like they just can't seem to take that first step?
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful examples of overcoming hesitation actually comes from the world of literature.
Oh, I love a good book analogy.
Yeah, so think about J.K. Rowling in the Harry Potter series.
Okay, yeah.
Did you know that she faced 12 rejections
What?
before finding a publisher for the first book?
12.
12 rejections.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Can you imagine?
That's incredible.
I mean, that is like a masterclass in persistence right there.
Yeah.
Imagine if she'd given up after the first rejection, or even the 10th, right?
Mm-hmm.
The world would never have known about the magic of Harry Potter.
No. That's so inspiring.
It really is, and it just reminds us that success so often comes
Yeah.
after a series of setbacks,
Yeah.
It's about having the grit and the determination to keep going, even when you're facing, rejection or self-doubt.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to the core message of the article, right?
Yeah.
The journey to success doesn't require perfection. It requires motion.
It's so good, and it's so simple.
It is simple, but it's so powerful
Yeah.
because we get so caught up in the details.
Right, like we need the perfect plan or the perfect conditions.
Right. Exactly.
But the truth is, the most important thing is to just start moving.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect place to transition into the final section of our deep dive, where we really want to bring it back to you, the listener,
Yes.
and make it personal. So we've talked about the problem, the reasons behind it, the price we pay for inaction, the power of imperfect action. We've even given you some practical strategies for breaking free.
Right, so now it's your turn to kind of take the wheel.
So thinking about everything we've talked about today, what's that one thing that you've been putting off? Is it that dream project or that conversation you've been meaning to have or that new skill you've always wanted to learn?
Yeah, don't overthink it. Just pick one thing that comes to mind.
Exactly. And then just think about what's the smallest possible step that you could take today, right now, to move just a little bit closer to that goal.
Remember, it's all about motion, not perfection.
It really is. And that closing message of the article, the journey to success doesn't require perfection. It requires motion. I mean, that has really stuck with me.
It's so good, isn't it? Because it reminds us that we don't have to have all the answers or wait for the perfect moment.
Right?
We just need to start moving.
Yeah, and you know what? On that note, I'm kind of curious, if you could go back and tell your past self one thing about overcoming hesitation, what would it be?
That's a really interesting question. I think I would probably tell myself to be a little more forgiving, to embrace those stumbles and setbacks as just part of the process and to celebrate all those small victories along the way.
Oh, I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in self-criticism and just forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
It really is.
What about you? What advice would you give your past self about this whole overcoming hesitation thing?
You know what? I think I'd probably tell myself to worry a little less about what other people think and just trust my instincts more.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy how much energy we waste just trying to please everyone else.
That is so true. It's like we're giving everyone else a vote in our own lives.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, the only opinion that truly matters is our own.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into why hesitation costs us more than failure and how to break free.
We really hope that this conversation has given you some new insights and, more importantly, inspired you to take action.
Because remember, every second counts.
That's right. So don't let hesitation steal your dreams.
Get out there and make it happen.
Yes.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that we all need to know more about. So until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving forward.